Open this.
Yeah.
Okay. I hereby open the session of the Springfield Planning Commission, acting in its role as the Committee for Citizen Involvement. Could we please have a roll call?
Chair Buck is absent. Vice Chair Schmuck,
Here?
Commissioner Driggs,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson,
Here.
Commissioner Greenwell,
Here.
and Commissioner Weber.
Here.
Okay, hopefully you've all had a chance to review the agenda. Any changes for anyone? Okay. Call the first agenda item, Springfield Housing Related Code and Plan Update, Community Engagement Plan. Haley Campbell, Senior Planner, is going to help us with that.
Good evening. Sorry. There we go. A little better. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Haley Campbell, as was introduced. I'm a senior planner. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a code and plan update. Before we get into the engagement strategies, I want to give you guys a little bit of a presentation. Parts of this presentation were shared with the City Council when we introduced the project to them on March 3rd, just to give a little bit of background and talk about what the project's about, again, before we get into those strategies.
My apologies. You're muted, so nobody can.
Can they
No,
hear me on the
no.
mic?
But interestingly enough, I was just told that they can't hear you. Just a second, I'm gonna.
Anybody hear me online? Feel free to leave a comment. Nobody can hear me.
How about this? Can online hear this?
Technical difficulties. Okay. All right. We're going to continue with the presentation. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll go from there. Okay. So tonight, the purpose of the housing related code and plan update is to continue the ongoing work of Springfield's housing strategy to help the city come into compliance with all state housing related statutes and rules, as well as alignment with the city's goals for facilitating housing production, affordability, and choice by reducing regulatory barriers. Particular attention will be focused on amending the development code to include clear and objective standards for mixed-use districts. In Springfield's, as expressed in Springfield City Council Resolution number 2023-28. So at this meeting, of course, I'm going to introduce the project and I'll get direction from the Planning Commission on the engagement strategies. But for some background, on the screen, we're going to talk about the state statute compliance and the policy-driven changes, which are two parts of the code and plan audit, which is the first phase of this project. For state statute compliance, a portion of the audit, Cascadia Partners will review Springfield's development code, the comprehensive plan and refinement plans for compliance with DLCD's key housing statutes and rules. They will then redline the code and plan sections that are non-compliant or needing change for the code and plan concepts works to come. For the policy-driven changes portion of the audit, Cascadia Partners will review the comprehensive plan goals, the housing plans, and policy audits to identify existing or past Springfield pro-housing strategies. They will then take inventory of potential code barriers and select housing types from the CFAC walkable standards to test development feasibility against these code barriers. Again, any code sections or housing strategies from the comprehensive plans or refinement plans that trigger specific development barriers or issues will be flagged for change during the code and plan concepts work. Specifically, for the code and plan audit, there are some state statutes that will be reviewed. These look like ORS 197 and 197A for comprehensive land use planning, which will look at allowed housing types, procedural requirements, and clear and objective standards. For ORS 222, city planning and zoning, we will look at permitting and review requirements. ORS 92 for subdivisions and partitions, and OAR 660 for DLCD's administrative rules, again, with emphasis on the climate-friendly areas. Cascadia Partners estimates that the majority of the findings will be reviewed internally with staff by mid-March. I'm going to go into a lot of detail here, so bear with me. For the clear and objective standards, ORS 197A.400, state law requires cities to adopt clear and objective standards, conditions, and procedures when regulating the development of housing. This applies to all standards that apply to housing and residential uses, such as design criteria, setbacks and height, and land use application criteria. This could look like partitions, subdivisions, site review, and conditional use permits that will provide housing. Two examples of some of the findings are shown on the slide in the box in blue. For SDC 3.3.1025 nodal development area, specific design standards, there's a standard for compatibility for massing and scale that required development to break up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller varied masses and avoid single monolithic forms that are not relieved by variations in massing. That's what our code says currently. Cascadia Partners found that SDC 3.3 1.1025 A1E3B, wow, is not clear and objective. New clear and objective code language could say buildings shall incorporate at least two of the following massing techniques for any facade longer than 50 feet. Notice the distinction. One is clear, the other is not. The other example shown on the screen is from Springfield Development Code 3.4.275, Glenwood Riverfront Mixed Use Plan District, Building Design Standards. The requirement is for ground floor building facades, where development must utilize ground floor windows and entrances that provide a high level of transparency by allowing views both inward and outward. Cascadia Partners found again that this was not clear and objective. New clear and objective code language could say something like, the ground floor must include transparency or glazing. This could look like glass windows or glass doors, totaling a minimum of 40% of the ground level wall area, including the ground level wall that is up to 10 feet above finished grade. The next section is about the code and plan audit or policy-driven changes. Springfield and Cascadia Partners have discussed looking at policy-driven changes as they affect multifamily and mixed-use land districts in Springfield. This is separate from the code compliance audit, which we just discussed, and you can think of it as our way of ensuring that citywide we are promoting policies through code that are supportive of housing development. This will feed into the code concepts work in the next phase. Notes from the CFEC walkability design standards note that many cities have taken or are in the midst of the first steps required by the CFEC program to designate climate-friendly areas. The requirements in OAR 660-12-330 or Rule 330 are intended to strengthen walkability for the rest of the city. Specifically, the main streets and neighborhoods surrounding the CFAs that will support these growing centers of activity. Land use regulations required by 330 apply to the entire urban growth boundary. This includes all commercial and residential zone districts. Cities are not required to update site design regulations in zones with a predominantly industrial or rural character. Walkable design standards apply both within and outside of climate-friendly areas. There will be some overlap between land use regulation changes related to 330 and those related to land use requirements in the CFAs, as required by 660-12-320. The intent is that the CFEC standards cover additional areas that are not designated as CFAs. For example, a highway commercial zone or small area of a neighborhood commercial and or downtown or corridor. The intent behind the question on the screen is to assess how well Springfield's current multifamily and mixed-use land districts support development types promoted by CFEC. Again, this will feed into the code concepts portion of the project. Related questions might include, are there certain building types that should be allowed in certain land use districts? Which ones? What standards would have to change to allow that to happen? Are the proposed changes palatable to the city, etc.? I'm now going to stop sharing and I'll move on to the discussion portion and a little bit of background on the project. So as I mentioned earlier, we did take this proposal to the City Council to introduce the project on March 3rd. For a little bit of background, we also discussed the mixed use districts when we introduced the housing and non-residential area code amendments in 2024. Staff noted that while that was outside of the scope of that project, we hope to work on it if we receive the grant for this project, which we did, and that's why we're proceeding with this project at this time. So to discuss the engagement plan and the strategies in the plan, we'd like to ask some questions. These are not limited to these questions alone. Number one, are the proposed engagement activities the best method to achieve the outreach goals? Are there any edits or questions to the key messages? Are there any suggestions on who and how staff should recruit for the technical advisory committee? When we did take this to council, council advised the creation of an ad hoc governance committee and that the planning commission consider the creation of a technical advisory committee. We would have to recruit for that technical advisory committee. So if the planning commission's recommendation tonight is to proceed with a technical advisory committee, we'd start recruitment for that pretty much immediately. And then you would review the applications and we'd introduce the applicants at the May 20th date, which is the next date we have scheduled with the Planning Commission to discuss the results of the audit and discuss the applicants for the TAC. So I also have tonight, I'll share my screen for the engagement plan. And then if you guys have any questions or edits, I'm happy to edit them live with you on the screen.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Haley. So I guess any questions to start down here? None? Anybody? Okay. So we're working on the implementation of the code and plan updates. And so this is specifically about informing the public and getting the code in compliance with state guidelines, state mandates, correct? So I guess could you share, first of all, DLCD hires the consultant, but do they provide any compensation to the city for going through this process?
No.
Okay. So I guess I have some specific questions about the process in terms of what it's to highlight, what it's specifically supposed to look at. So, and help me with this. Is this to this has nothing to do with housing need. I mean, it's not going to change it's not going to help housing need. It's just going to tell us how that's supposed to be done.
I have Sandy talk about this one.
So this project doesn't analyze what housing need we have, but what it does do, hopefully, is it provides an easier path in the mixed use areas in particular to provide for someone to create that housing as well as comply with state law. So we're hoping that we can expand the types of housing and that the developers will find it easier to build housing in Springfield as a result of this project.
Strictly from the standpoint of their understanding the requirements, may not comply with the market, but they're, as long as they understand the requirements for housing, then they've got a choice to build it or not.
Well, making the requirements easier. Like, I mean, Haley gave you some examples of code language that it's like, well,
Yeah,
how would we meet that requirement when it's not clear to a developer? Whereas if we have clear standards, then they know what to do. It takes the question out of it. So they don't have to invest and wonder if it's going to be approved or not. And maybe allow more housing in mixed use areas than we currently allow. A lot of times we require a certain percentage of commercial. As long as we're not threatening our commercial and industrial land inventory, then maybe we can allow more housing in those mixed use areas than we allow now.
okay, so that's a fine walk. I mean, you have to be careful about how you implement state standards so that you don't put a wet blanket on any kind of development that you might be desirable.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me, I'm just kind of looking at my notes, make sure I've got all my questions. Anybody else with questions? Nobody? Okay, well, I think that's helpful. So we're looking at implementing this guide that we've been provided. Anybody, again, questions? Because somebody want to make a motion as to whether to adopt this concept and purpose?
Haley, were you gonna share? Yeah, thank you.
So I'm just going to scroll down to the strategies real quick. Okay. And this is just broken down by the different phases of the project. So we have kickoff, launching of the project. That's basically the phase that we're at right now. We're going to create that project page. We discussed with City Council, the governance committee created ad hoc. The next big task would be the recruitment for the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee. So we have some examples here on the screen of ways that we would like to consider recruiting for that TAC. That includes posting on the project webpage, a city newsletter, a media release, social media. We'll have an announcement proposed at the Development Community Center. That is anytime an applicant comes and they have an application to submit to our current planning department, there will be a notice up on the screen or a poster out in the hallway to say, hey, we're recruiting for a TAC. There will be an application form available for them to take with them. There will be a link to the application form that will be online. And then another suggestion that we had was business cards. We are considering the option of visiting some businesses in key areas. This could be downtown, Mohawk, Gateway, to recruit potential people to the TAC. The next phase, again, we're going to have that audit phase. So Cascadia is in that process right now of generating an audit for us to review. Staff will review that internally. Once it's finalized, then we'll move on to the concepts phase. That's more of a public outreach portion, so that will have one of the first phases where we will engage with the public. We're not expecting to engage with the public until this summer. But we will also be looking for opportunities to engage in projects or timelines where we could attend public meetings or events. Let's say an event at city, at the
Well, there'd be the block party for
block
one.
party. Thank you. Thank you. Any council or chamber events, we would attend some of those, potentially hand out some of those business cards or flyers. We're considering presentations at those. We'd also be looking to connect with some industry professionals at one-on-one meetings or team meetings if possible. And of course, we'll be developing a fact sheet to just kind of get the word out about what this project is about. Then moving on to the concept phase that would happen over the summer. Again, we're going to connect with those industry professionals. We'll meet with the governance committee with the intent that city council will likely be on recess, but they'll want to be kept informed about the progress we're making for this project. We're proposing to table at some events, so walk and roll events this summer, or any block party events that could be happening this summer. We just really want to try to get the word out about this project. We have the potential to include a survey, and that will be something that staff will work with Cascadia Partners to generate. Cascadia Partners might produce some of the graphics for the project, maybe some of the content. We are looking at potentially hosting the survey ourselves, but they would help us generate the materials that would go into that survey. And then for the amendments phase, again, pretty much the same thing, although with this portion, we hope to hold some public workshops. That will be an opportunity for the public who maybe hasn't engaged in previous events to come and ask questions of city staff or get any materials that may have been presented at TAC meetings that they didn't attend. So it'll really be wrapping up the project for eventual adoption. By the time we get to the adoption phase, Cascadia has kind of wrapped up the project, and it'll be on the responsibility of staff to take it through the adoption process. That is slated to happen at the beginning of next year. So imagine 6 months in the beginning of 2026 for adoption. That was an overview of the engagement strategies. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts?
Just make me clear on this. The technical advisory committee, is that the industry professionals, or is it separate from that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Usually, our current planning manager, Mark Rust, he has held some of our TAC meetings and governance committee meetings for the previous development code update project. He could potentially give some more information on that, but usually it's industry professionals, developers, real estate agents, housing providers, things like that, who usually have experience or interest in development in Springfield. So they usually can say, hey, I have a concern about this mixed use section of code. Sandy gave the example of and I think in our commercial mixed use district, there's a split between how much commercial and residential development can occur within a building. So that's some feedback that we received when we went through the housing and non-residential areas code amendments. That was actually a public comment that we received asking staff to look into that section. And of course, we mentioned we don't have capacity to look at it at that time, but now we received this grant so we can look at it. So those are really the types of questions and concerns we want to hear. But that doesn't mean that we also don't want to hear from the public. Of course, there could be, community members who have great input on, hey, I'd like to consider housing in these areas or my neighborhood, or I have a concern about traffic and how that relates to housing. So I think it's gonna depend on what kind of feedback and interest we get from the public.
So it'll be somewhat open is what it boils down to. You'll see who you get, in other words.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I just based off of that, we've had some people who sat on previous TAC committees who said, I don't have capacity right now to sit on another one. But we have had other opportunities, potential recruitment for the planning commission, people who were not accepted, who we could potentially reach out to. Again, it's just going to depend.
I think Monica wanted to say something as well to that.
Good evening, commissioners. Wow, I'm not sure you can even hear me. Not feeling well. I don't know if I'm even audible. I might have to just follow up. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Haley touched on it, but we did some pre-work talking with some of our contacts in the development community who said they just aren't whether capacity or just maybe unable to participate in the TAC this round, but wanted to acknowledge their valuable input and heard positive things like they may want to engage in other ways more organically. So it would be can we just talk about this and meet for coffee, or can we come to your office, come to City Hall? So I think that industry professionals will engage in other ways as well to answer more of like, why do you identify it twice? Just trying to provide some flexibility. Okay, and I should probably stop talking now. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that input. You down here? Questions?
Yeah, thanks so much for the great presentation. Just had a few thoughts from the public engagement side. I found that sign-in sheets are really effective. I'm a big promoter of them. Put them next to candy on a big table, make them more attractive, and really encourage follow-up. So one of the things I try to do in my position is basically get their names and then make sure that they understand that they are valued, their opinion is valued. So I send a follow-up communication to add them to a listserv if we have that for the city of Springfield. And secondly, I'm really glad that we're highlighting folks who are currently in the industry. In my previous experience, contractors and developers are the primary folks who are going to be accessing this code. And so I really liked your plain language example of breaking down the percentages and so forth. I had one more thing, but excellent job. I really appreciate you also adding the discussion questions to the memo. I think that was a point I think I brought up a month or two ago, and it really helped me kind of zone in on what to focus on. So thank you.
Sorry, back up a little. I just wanted to say that I really liked the idea of going to the local businesses in the climate friendly areas and speaking to like business owners there. I think that's a really valuable option that the city should pursue.
I would definitely like to throw in positive for having a committee attack. The people that are going to daily use the language should probably be involved in producing the language. And I think that would ultimately make it easier. And after reading through the description of that, I'll volunteer for it if I can be the first or the second. That's it.
So you're going to do this audit, and then we'll have a document to then look at, hopefully get the attention of folks and find a shiny object that we can get the community to look at. Is that fair to say?
Yes, so I think the intent is the audit might not be ready for the public to review. That's just going to be like the initial results. We'll then go with those initial results, and that will kind of depend or help us make changes at the concepts phase. So there's 3 phases to the project, right? There's the audit, the concepts, and the actual amendments. And the audit is just the first look at it. The concepts are like, hey, here's some proposals that we have for amending this code section. What do you think? And that is where we would share that information with the public. That's where we'd want them to engage and be like, yes, I like this. No, I don't like this. They'd, maybe respond in a survey. We could talk to them about it at a tabling event, those times. And then from there, after we've finalized the concepts, we would go towards the adoption package. And that would be more of like, hey, we've done all this work. What do you think at a workshop or public event?
Thank you. Okay, so, but I mean, obviously the audit's the first thing. We get there and then get some folks involved to look at it. So timeline wise, we're recruiting at what point?
Now.
Okay.
Basically, as soon as I get out of this meeting and you guys tell me, hey, I do want to see you create a TAC, then as soon as I get out of this meeting, I'm going to start getting that information out there. We're going to create the website. We're going to get in a newsletter, in a social media post. So We're going to try to get the word out as quickly as possible so that we basically have about a month and a half to come back to you with a package of here's who we got, who were interested in being on that TAC. What do you think?
Okay, so so you're definitely going to have a advisory, a TAC advisory group. And then, sorry, there was, so the governance committee, that's not necessary. You're asking us whether we think that should be implemented or recruited for?
So we already took the governance committee proposal to the city council and usually, and I could be wrong, but I believe the city council are the ones who usually make a recommendation for that because it's not just the planning commission, it would be the city council and the planning commission. Although, you know, if you guys say you don't want a governance committee, we can talk to them at the next work session we have scheduled with them. That is not part of the governance committee. Basically, this timeline works where we usually go to city council and then planning commission and city council, planning commission, and then planning commission. So we'll be checking in with you guys several times at work sessions to go over, like I said, the audit, the progress we're making on the project, check in, ask questions, receive feedback. So the governance committee is usually 2 city council members and 2 planning commission members that would sit on the governance committee. And then TAC would be usually those public people or, you know, community members, developers, things like that.
Should we be talking now about which one of the planning commissioners should be on that? Or is this premature?
I would suggest you do that at your next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Not your next meeting, the next time that she comes back to you on
Okay.
this topic.
All right.
Then we can finalize the TAC and the governance committee with who will be from the planning commission.
You need a motion from us to initiate the TAC?
We're gonna
Well, it's,
implement the.
yeah,
Okay.
the TAC is part of the community engagement plan. So if you approve the community engagement plan, that will be initiating the TAC.
Got it. So I guess we're ready to approve the community engagement strategy? Yeah? Okay,
I move to approve the community engagement strategy as presented in attachment 1 in the agenda packet for this item.
I'll second.
moved and seconded. We have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Call for a vote. Can we have roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmunk,
Aye.
Commissioner Weber,
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwell,
Aye.
and Commissioner Driggs.
Aye.
Motion passes 5.
Aye.
I can count.
5-0.
5-0.
Okay. All right, motion carries. We're going to adjourn the community involvement session. And I guess, so adjourn that, and unless someone wants to take a few minute break, we'd move right into the regular meeting. Everybody good with that? Okay. I hereby open a regular meeting of the Springfield Planning Commission. Could we have roll call, please?
Chair Buck is still absent. Vice Chair Schmunk,
Here?
Commissioner Greenwell,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson,
Here.
Commissioner Driggs,
Here.
and Commissioner Weber.
Here. Okay, any adjustments to the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none. Yes, thank you, Haley. Okay, seeing none, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we're going to approve the minutes from March 4. Any corrections to the minutes as published in the packet? Okay, no corrections. The minutes are approved. Minutes for March 4th, 2025 are approved. And do we have any business from the audience?
You can read, we have attendees in the, not in the audience, but online. So if you wouldn't mind reading
Okay.
the instructions for that, please.
We will now take business from the audience. This is the time in our agenda for public to provide testimony on any topic relevant to the Planning Commission, not otherwise on our agenda tonight. Later in our meeting, there will be a public hearing with an opportunity to address Planning Commission on specific topics of the proposed Highland site review. So anyone online, if there, I guess there is online folks. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand feature on the Zoom or press *9 if you're joining by phone. If you're here in person, please fill out the request to speak and card and present it to the Planning Commission assistant. When called upon to speak, please state your name and mailing address. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
I see no hands raised online and there are no, there's no one in the audience.
Okay. Okay, for the first agenda item, Highland Plan Site Review. This is a continued public hearing from February 19th. Since that meeting, the applicant has withdrawn the application from major variance, so we will only consider the site plan review application tonight. Mary Bridget Smith explanation. We'll do an explanation of the quasi-judicial hearing process.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be putting into the record and advising the commission about some procedural aspects of this quasi-judicial hearing. This is a continued hearing, so it'll be a shorter amount of information than typical, but I'll go ahead and read into the record and then you can query members about conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts. So before the start of the hearing, members of the Planning Commission will state whether they have a potential or an actual conflict of interest. A potential conflict occurs if a recommendation could result in the financial benefits or avoiding a detriment for that commissioner or one of their household members or business for which they're associated. An actual conflict occurs if their recommendation would have that result. For potential conflicts of interest, the commissioner will explain the nature of the conflict, but may still participate in the deliberations and decision-making. However, if an actual conflict exists, the commissioner must step down from the commission during the matter and may not participate in the deliberations or decision-making. Conflicts of interest must be declared at each meeting, and if a commissioner announced the conflict at a first public hearing, they must restate it this evening. Commissioners will also state whether they have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have any independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. If a commissioner has such ex parte contacts, they must disclose the substance of that contact. If a commissioner has independent knowledge of relevant facts, the commissioner must summarize those facts if they are already not included in the record. Unlike a conflict of interest, commissioners only need to disclose any ex parte contacts or independent knowledge of relevant facts that they have not already disclosed at the first public hearing. During the time for public testimony, a witness may challenge the impartiality of a planning commissioner and may rebut the substance of the commissioner's knowledge of the facts. The commissioner in question may then respond to that challenge. Chair, it is now appropriate to open the continued public hearing and ask any of the planning commissioner if they wish to declare any potential conflicts of interest, actual conflicts of interest, ex parte contact, or independent knowledge of relevant facts. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing on this item. I'll start by asking planning commissioners to disclose any conflicts of interest, bias, or ex parte contact or personal knowledge of relevant facts. And we'll start to the left with Commissioner Thompson.
No conflicts of interest, bias, or ex parte contact.
No potential or actual conflicts of interest, bias, or ex parte contact.
No conflicts of interest, bias, or ex parte contact.
No conflicts. bias or ex parte contact.
Nothing to declare or disclose, no ex parte contact or contact of any kind on this issue.
Okay, Mark Rust's with us for the staff report. Mark, thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Mark Rust, the current planning manager with the City of Springfield. I'm sitting in for Andy Lindberg tonight, who's the senior planner working on this project. We are just requesting the Planning Commission to acknowledge, one, the withdrawal of the major variance, as was stated earlier, and then also to continue the public hearing again from the original public hearing that was opened. Let me just check the date, February 19th, 2025. It had been continued to tonight, and now we're requesting it be continued again until April 15th, 2025 at a special meeting time of 6 p.m. I do have just a brief written statement from Andy tonight that I'd like to read into the record, if that's all right. So Andy had prepared this. His staff would like to provide a quick update on the Type 3 major variance and site plan review applications that are subject to the continued public hearing this evening. The applicant has withdrawn the major variance request and has submitted modified application materials for the site plan review application. Because both applications were previously elevated to, well, I should say that the Type 2 site plan in conjunction with the major variance was elevated to a Type 3 process to be before this body. The acceptance, review, and approval of the modified site plan will remain with the Planning Commission. The modified site plan materials were received after the March 18th meeting packet was due, so there wasn't sufficient time for staff to create an amended site plan review report. The applicant's request for modified site plan, along with an amended site plan review staff report, will be presented to the Planning Commission for consideration as if approved or acknowledged by the Planning Commission tonight at the meeting on April 15th. The applicant has agreed to restart the 120-day review timeline from the date they submitted the modified application materials. At this time, the Planning Commission is being asked to accept any testimony pertaining to the proposed site plan review. After any testimony, the Planning Commission is requested to continue the public hearing to the date of April 15th, 2025 at 6 p.m. The modified application and updated staff report will be available at least 7 days before the April 15th public hearing for any members of the public to review and if they wish to comment on the modified application. That's all that is written, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, could you explain, I guess, what will the removal of the major variance result in a change to, I guess, the improvements on the subject site with its removal? What will it look like? What changes, I guess?
Sure. So my understanding, the major variance was originally requested to ask to not pave the parking area or vehicle maneuvering area on the property. It is a development standard in our code that vehicle maneuvering areas be paved, essentially. So the applicant was originally trying to find if they could seek that, not paving it through a variance. Basically, through the initial staff review, it's not possible to request that standard to not be met through a major variance. One of the approval criteria for a major variance states that you're not asking for an exception to a development standard, basically. So, which is exactly what was being requested. So we wouldn't have been able to find that they had met the burden to achieve the major variance. So based on that initial input, they decided to withdraw that. So the modification to the site plan now will reflect them proposing likely to pave the area instead of not having it paved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there no other questions? So we're going to call for public testimony. Now's the time for the public testimony. We'll start with those in favor, followed by those neither in favor nor opposed, and conclude with those opposed. If you would like to speak and are joining us via Zoom, please use your raised hand feature or on the Zoom, or press *9 if joining by phone. If you're here in person, please fill out a request card and present it to the Planning Commission assistant. When called upon to speak, please state your name, mailing address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. So we'll call for public testimony. Anybody online?
We have people online, and there are no hands raised, and we only have staff in the audience.
Okay, all right. So and nobody has any other questions? So since the applicant has requested additional time to modify their application, staff's recommended that we continue the public hearing to a later date. Do we have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Seconded.
It moved and seconded.
And just for the record, I want to clarify that the date of the hearing will be Tuesday, April 15th at 6 p.m.
Okay. 6 p.m. Tuesday, April 15th. We have moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Greenwell,
Aye.
Commissioner Weber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schmunk,
Aye.
Commissioner Driggs,
Aye.
and Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Now we will, thank you, Mr. Rust. We'll now hear business from the Planning Commission. Are there any reports of council actions?
I have an assigned report from March 10th, which I will be prepared to provide at the next meeting.
I also have one. I'll defer. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Any other business from the Planning Commission? Anything that's come up? Please.
I'm just curious where we're at with applicants to fill the spot of the commissioner I've never met yet.
So council did interview Planning Commission applicants, decided they wanted to continue recruiting. So we've reopened the recruitment for Planning Commission. So please spread the word for both Planning Commission and now the Technical Advisory Committee for the Housing Code Project.
Yes, get the word out there. Any business from Development and Public Works Department, please?
That pretty much was what I was going to share.
Okay. You got ahead of me.
So
Okay.
thank you. Your next meeting on April 1st, we'll be back with Haley Campbell again, but this time talking about floodplain. So we'll have a work session starting at 6 o'clock. I think that will give you a good opportunity to have some dialogue with Haley, our floodplain manager, Jeremy, Christina, our assistant city attorney, to talk about options. We're going to really focus on getting direction as to how the Planning Commission wants us to move forward. Since there are some various options, you expressed quite a number of good questions last time that we're hoping to be able to help you work through. And then the continued public hearing at 7 o'clock on the floodplain to comply with the FEMA's PICM.
Okay. Okay, great. Anybody has anything else? I'm going to adjourn the Planning Commission regular meeting. Thank you all.